Are you very hungry though?
Do you not want to eat your shoe?
Friends are looking tasty though.
Surely they are edible.
No, 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 no.
Monster, monster, cooking the monster.
Cooking the Monster is proudly presented by Herbert, Matly and Kistrix.
Monster, monster, cooking the monster tonight.
Good evening, ghouls and goblins, and welcome back to Cooking the Monster. Today we continue our series on player race characters, and we're going to be covering the lithe, lean, and very dexterous elf in all its forms. How to eat it and what to do.
So elves formed originally, so fable goes, when the orc god Grumsh got into a fight with the elf god Coralan. The fight happened, blood was shed, the blood of Coralan became the elves. From there, they lived for a while in the Feywild. There was a big war between Lolth and her forces, and Coralan and his forces, and then after that, they were forced to come to the material plane.
So, from divine origins to permanent inhabitants, well, relative permanent inhabitants of the Feywild, these elves have a pretty magical origin, which means their essence must be strong. They would probably be appealing to various creatures who like to sup on the soul energy. Rogue tieflings, demons, stuff like that. But what about the flesh itself? What do you think, Zan?
We're thinking maybe that it was going to be a bit more like rabbit, a little gamier, something a bit more like kangaroo.
Oh yeah, I guess they are very high dexterity, what you were saying, very
Yeah.
twitchy kind of characters.
Yeah.
But would that also put a lot of chemicals in their system, do you think?
Yeah, it could do, particularly if you were hunting it as well. Maybe you were chasing a wood elf through the forest and hunting it down. They're also probably going to be quite lean, those meats as well, so there's not going to be a lot of fat.
But I guess elves have a habit of meditation, so that probably helps to clear a lot of those toxins from the system, take the stress down a lot, put them in like a hunting focus. I mean, even dark elves or drow usually have practices that help them remove all negative thoughts and focus on a task single-mindedly.
Yeah.
So then maybe the flesh actually might be potentially quite soft because meditation activates the parasympathetic nervous system. So that actually reduces the stress response and like nitric oxide in the body. So
I always see elves as kind of like a junk food. Like they have very little nutritional value, but a reasonable flavor. A lot of people talk about the same way about a rabbit. Is that right?
Yeah, it's just kind of like something that you eat on the go, kind of like something like Tracker Snacks or something like that.
Do you think you could make a good like a jerky out of them or some kind of...
for sure. If you could just get like parts of the flesh and if you could just kind of coat it in a syrup, I was thinking maybe you can use the sap from a birch tree, which are those type of trees are probably going to be very abundant.
It's like a candied elf?
Yeah, like candied elf.
Wow.
So that would be quite good. So you could just kind of baste the meat in the sap from the birch tree and then bake it or roast it over the fire.
And is the birch, it's very sweet, is that right?
Yeah, birch sap's very sweet. Yeah, so kind of like a maple syrup.
Yeah.
So you'd be looking at also a kebab or like a steak, a good steak perhaps. Probably not one of the ones where you'd want to like slow roast it or something.
I imagine there'd be reasonably small cuts though. You'd only get some large pieces on the rump, or if they're a very martial or physical elf, you'd be able to maybe get some chest pieces or some reasonable shoulder cuts.
Flank or thigh would probably be good as well.
Yeah.
Thin ribs would be pretty good because you make some really great ribs out of them. If you're again talking about some really heavy barbecue dressings, like having that something that's kind of palatable to other humanoid species.
Yeah, either something that traps the moisture in or something that you can add a bunch of moisture to the meat, I think would be a really good choice.
And also, it would really absorb the flavors.
Yeah.
And what would you like to see your elf served with? I mean, would it be a simple sort of field dressing where you'd sort of like roast some elf and throw in some potatoes and catch of the day if you're having them in a forest environment? Or again, throw a drow together with some various fungus or other things that you'd find in the Underdark?
I think you could make a really good drow kebab, just slices of like a roasted mushroom interspersed with the meat. Maybe if you had some like a bell pepper or something to just throw in.
Now, when I was thinking about kebab, I really thought like a rolled up. Like,
okay, so like
so diced
slice.
it up. Yeah, put it on a big spike
Like an
and just
Adana?
like yeah,
Like an
rotisserie
Adana
kind
kebab?
of. Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
you're thinking about like the pakme, like the shish kebab.
That's what I thought. But yeah, no, look, a kebab would be a great idea. Just on the skewer, you could line them all up. But what do you think the unique quality of that flavor would be?
I think a lot of that is going to depend, again, on the nature of the elf. Whether you've got your sort of like the more vegetarian or like forest-based diet of a wood elf. You've got the more sort of traditional, what you get in most sort of sentient species, kind of high elf. Or you've got the like mushroom-based underdark drow. It's going to really distinctly flavor the meat. And I think sort of
So
deciding...
the high elf would be more omnivorous because
Yes.
typically
Yeah.
they put themselves above nature and exalt themselves to that point, whereas the wood elf would be more of a
living
vegetarian,
amongst.
Yeah.
yes, living amongst and exalting nature as its equal, whereas, well, I guess the drow, they've got something else going on entirely.
Yeah, any underdark creature is going to have its own sort of distinct...
But they would also be adding a lot of insects to their diet.
Insects are a good source of high protein, so you'd be looking at that. One thing to note is that a lot of the same proteins that are in insects are in shellfish. So if you have an allergy to shellfish, it's likely that you'll also have an allergy to insects.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good thing to
That's a good
consider.
point. Maybe also staying away from the stomach and staying away some of the more offal mates of the elf to avoid.
If you have that
Contamination.
kind
Yeah,
of
for sure.
allergy.
And also, as with the Duergar, when we were talking in our last episode, dwarves have a high tolerance of poisons, but elves living in the Underdark would probably be eating a lot more poisonous fungus, spider meats, scorpions, carrion crawlers, even other things that have poisons in them.
You could actually do something. You could do like a elf hand, kind of like the chicken claw that you find in some Asian cuisines as well. So you could do the elf hand because they would have a lot of strong
You
cartilage.
really steam it or boil it to a point where
Yeah.
it starts to slow off the flesh and you'd be able to get in there
That'd be
and
quite
with your
good.
teeth. That'd be really
Yeah.
nice.
You do that. Serve it up with some nice jam or something. Rose jam.
I'm
Fancy.
excited. And then you can just start mixing it up. But let's not get into casseroles and other assorted combinations just yet. We're focusing on the elf today. And I think there's not much more that we need to cover, but it's not about what we have to bring to the table. It's about what you're going to bring to the table, and we'd like to know. So please jump in the comments below. Let us know how you'd prepare your elf, how you'd like to cook that flesh, flavor it, and what recipes you might suggest. We'd love to hear from you. You've been watching Cooking the Monster, and we'll see you next week.
Monster, cooking the monster.